Well, welcome everybody to our first PELIS meeting for 2023. My name is Brenda Orchard. I'm the CAO for the County of Lennox and Addington. And I'm here just to start the meeting and do the election for our chair and vice chair. But before I do that, I'm going to invite our elected officials to introduce themselves to each other, since some folks might not know each other. So I'll start on my screen with Brad. Oh, you're muted, Brad. Sorry.
That was a test. You passed. I'm Brad Nyman. I'm counselor for Bloomfield, Hollowell, and Ward 2 for Prince Edward County.
Great, thank you. Warden Hogg.
Yes, Henry Hogg. I'm the Reeve of Addington Highlands and the Warden of Lennox and Addington County this year.
Great, thank you. Councillor Fritsch.
Yes, I'm counselor for Ward 1 in Addington Highlands, and also the deputy reeve of the township.
Thank you. Mayor Ferguson.
Hi, everybody. Morning. Steve Ferguson, the mayor of Prince Edward County.
Thank you. And Councillor Branderhorst.
Hello, I'm Sam Branderhorst. I'm the counselor of Athol Ward, Ward 5 in Prince Edward County.
Thank you very much. Okay, so every year we rotate the chair and vice chair between the two counties. So this year it is Prince Edward County's turn to be chair and Lennox and Addington County's time to be vice chair. So I will start the nominations, asking for nominations for the chair, which would come from Prince Edward County. Do I have a mover for Sam? Go ahead.
I would like to nominate Councillor Nyman to be chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Ferguson, thank you. Councillor Nyman, are you willing to have your name stand?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'll just have to ask two more times. Are there any further nominations for chair for 2023? Seeing none, final time. Are there any further nominations for chair for 2023? Okay, well, thank you. Could I get a motion then to acclaim Councillor Nyman as the chair for 2023 for PELIS? Moved by Warden Hogg, seconded by Councillor Fritsch. All those in favor? Congratulations, Councillor Nyman. So now I'll move on.
Thank you.
Yay. I will move on to vice chair, which will be from the County of Lennox and Addington. Could I have a nomination for vice chair? Warden Hogg.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Fritsch.
Do I have a seconder for that nomination? Mayor Ferguson, thank you. Councillor Fritsch, are you willing to have your name stand?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask two more times. Are there any further nominations for a vice chair from Lennox and Addington? Seeing none, third and final time. Are there any further nominations for vice chair from Lennox and Addington? Seeing none, congratulations, Councillor Fritsch. Could I have a motion to acclaim Councillor Fritsch as the vice chair? Moved by Councillor Nyman, seconded by Warden Hogg. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Well, now, Councillor Nyman, as chair, I'll turn it over to you. And we will point out to Councillor Fritsch, our vice chair, that Councillor Nyman has to leave the meeting shortly. So you'll be in your vice duties taking over as chair of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? I can't see anybody. I'm on my phone. It's the first time using my phone on Zoom. So if somebody could just move it and say yes, I'd move it. I'd appreciate it.
Councillor Nyman, if it's difficult for you while you're driving, you could ask the vice chair, since he's going to be carrying through the rest of the meeting, to chair it. You might want to ask your vice chair to just chair the meeting for you from this point.
That I appreciate that. Tony, would you mind doing that?
Yes, Brad, gladly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by, I just got to get myself slightly organized here. So make sure I remember everyone's name. It was moved by Sam and seconded by Brad. Any errors or additions? None noted. All in favor? Show of hands. Carried. Thank you. Disclosure of a pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. None noted. Delegations and presentations. Cabinscape Wildscape Company. John Lochner. John, you're there?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen here.
You need him.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for taking the time to hear me. I'm just going to take a quick run through here. We have a partnership with Landmark County that I'm going to talk a little bit about, but also some of our future plans. Just a quick background on myself. I run two companies. Cabinscape, we've been operating for the past 5 years. It's a short-term rental accommodation company. But what we've taken some of our learnings in building. So in the process of building these what we call tiny cabins, we've become a CSA certified factory, and we saw a lot of opportunity with that, and have recently started a company called Wildscape. The intent with Wildscape is to build and sell units, and in moving into some of our research and development, we actually partnered with Lanark County to apply for a Green Municipal Fund pilot project, which we've recently won. So we're moving forward with the build on this. The intent with this was to create a carbon negative manufactured home. So we're looking at the different types of materials that are being used, the different type of operational efficiencies. But the whole idea is to create a CSA certified manufactured small home design that ultimately has at least carbon neutral or preferably carbon negative footprint. So the idea being that ultimately, if it's carbon negative, it's actually a carbon sink, hence the Project Sink House name. So the hopes here, this will be a CSA certified unit. We're currently working with LEED. There's a good chance that this is a LEED Platinum project as well. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about what we kind of call the 3 pillars of sustainable building. So one thing that you're probably fairly familiar with is the idea of operational carbon. So this is basically what carbon is produced in the operating of a home. So that's, typically heating or water heating, cooking, any of the sorts of things that create or use or consume energy. And then you can create efficiencies around that by insulation. Everybody knows about, how much insulation is in the walls or how efficient are your windows. All that kind of stuff is very well covered in provincial code. And there's a lot of existing programs that support this, updating, upgrading your windows, all that kind of stuff. The second part that's really not addressed very much at this point, which I think is a very important part of building and taking into consideration and building moving forward, is the idea of embodied carbon. So this is really what's the carbon that's produced in the manufacturing or building of a home, as well as all the materials and components that go into that home. So this is where we're doing something fairly different with the pilot project. Is we're going to be looking at the carbon footprints and the carbon load of all the materials that we're using, and trying to find the best quality materials with the minimum carbon footprint. So instead of something like spray foam, which is fairly commonly used right now, but has a very high carbon footprint, it's typically, chemicals shipped across the ocean from China. It basically precludes any sort of recycling. So when you put spray foam in walls, it's just basically like an adhesive that sticks everything together. So you're not really able to recycle anything afterwards. So it typically just ends in the landfill. So as far as the overall life cycle of a building, it's not a great material. So we're looking at something like, we're using cellulose insulation in the walls and wood fiberboard as like an exterior continuous insulation. So this is all still stuff that meets code, but it's also basically like a carbon sink type of material or some sort of carbon sequestering material. So embodied carbon is something that is fairly new and is just kind of bubbling up in the architecture and design world, but I think is going to become more and more prominent in general building and should probably be codified at some point. As an example, in I think Vancouver, they've recently started doing stimulus for this type of approach, or basically rewarding builders for using this type of approach. So we're just on the fringe of beginning to see programs where there's reductions in taxes or reductions in building costs of some sort in order to reward people who are considering their embodied carbon load. And then the third sort of pillar of sustainable building is the idea of durability and quality. So just the importance of the longevity of a build. So obviously, if you're building something that only lasts for 10 or 20 years and you're scrapping the whole thing and having to rebuild again, all that embodied carbon comes into play. So the idea of building something that's going to last for a long time. So I use the example of like shingles versus a steel roof. So steel isn't necessarily the greatest product from an embodied carbon perspective, but given the amount of time it lasts, you can see easily 50+ years on a steel roof. It's worth the trade-off typically. So if you're using shingles, it's a lower cost up front, but you're probably going to have to replace them 2 or 3 times, possibly more in the lifespan of a steel roof. So your overall embodied carbon load cost is much higher with shingles than it would be with a basic steel roof. So this is all the, like, we're doing the lifespan calculations of an entire unit as part of the Sink House project to find the optimal build to ensure minimum carbon load and as well as cost efficiencies. So just looking at the types of applications for these small home units. In the case of the Sink House project, we're building 2 units on urban lot in Perth, Ontario. So these will be fully serviced. They're going to be connected to hydroseptic water, and they'll be used as part of their affordable housing portfolio. Obviously, now with Bill 23, you're able to put up to 3 of these units on a service lot. With obviously with rezoning, you could do more than that. So we are, like I mentioned, a CSA certified factory. So we're one of, I don't use the word tiny homes often simply because CSA doesn't have a tiny home certification. So as per CSA, they're not called tiny homes, they're small homes. Ontario Building Code has recently kind of addressed tiny homes as anything smaller than 600 square feet. So they're in the tiny home design style, but we call them small homes. But we're one of the only manufacturers of tiny homes in Ontario, and we are the only manufacturer of off-grid or solar small homes like this, period. So that gives us the opportunity to operate in rural communities or in remote areas. We also have a smaller design that we like with Cabinscape we've been using as a bunkie, but we're working on an updated design for Wildscape. These could be used as sort of temporary housing or transitional housing accommodations. So another example is I was recently reading about a community out in Fredericton where they have about 40 of these types of units where it's just for, it's a fairly basic unit. It's a roof over your head. It's a place where you can be warm, and they're seeing, great success in people transitioning through this, offering this type of a unit where they don't have to worry about where they're going to lie their head at night. They don't have to worry about being warm. They can start focusing on labor opportunities, and they're seeing really good success with. I think they have about 40 of those units, and they're increasing in size. But then you have a shared access to showers and kitchen and that sort of stuff. So it's a way to create really affordable transitional type housing. And again, we have rural application or very remote applications. So the ability to, put something that's entirely solar, entirely off grid, and its own servicing. So one of the next sort of projects that we're working on, bouncing off of the Sink House project, there's a CMHC is offering what's called the Housing Supply Challenge right now. The idea is basically they have 4 different stages. They're in the 4th stage right now. The 4th stage is focused on reducing barriers to building, on scalability, affordability, and innovative solutions. So we really feel that taking the sort of Sink House learnings and expanding on that is a really good fit for this program. So what we'd really like to do is actually take the Sink House design, modify it, and be able to put together what's essentially row housing. So there are a lot of cost efficiencies in building just because there's less exterior cladding on the building envelope. When you have these shared demising walls, they're also much more efficient from an operational perspective for insulation, so they're cheaper to heat. And we also want to be able to increase the size a little bit and offer barrier-free sized or style units. So we can also bring the aging population into the types of demographics that we can serve. So the overall intent here would be, we take these sort of modular designs and we have a few different sort of floor plans and layouts, and we can actually just sort of like Tetris them together in different ways to optimize what might be a small or awkward space, or, you know, perhaps where there's already existing housing, we can fill in a backyard. But it gives us the opportunity to create pre-manufactured, pre-engineered models that can then be put together in such a way to, again, optimize the space with a very limited amount of engineering or architecture work. So we can really bring down the design costs in approaching properties by having pre-engineered designs that can be basically fit together. So that's what we'd like to do as part of the CMHC's Housing Supply Challenge. So this challenge, the initial application is due for April. Then they basically have the shortlisted groups have a 6-month period from July to December of 2023 to do the design phase. Then they will basically assess it through 2024 to 2025. From March 2024 to March 2025, there's a $37 million pool that gets shared between applicants in order to execute the build. So what we're really looking for at this stage is basically a property partner, somebody who, you know, it could be a variety of solutions, whether it's affordable or transitional housing, it could be worker housing. There's no real specifications on the type of housing, but what they're looking for is something that breaks down barriers to quick building to meet the housing supply crisis. And we're just looking for somebody who basically has a property that's looking for a problem to solve that we can work with and build this solution on. So ultimately, we would be doing the design and build work, and the CMHC Housing Supply Challenge, it's basically a grant. It covers all of the design cost and it covers the full build cost. And then the idea would be similar to the Sink House project. The units then become part of the housing, you know, the portfolio of the partner. And another thing that we do that's a little different is, you know, maybe someday down the road we'll get a $10 million loan and spend 5 years building a mega factory. But in the meantime, we can build really efficiently and really quickly with fairly small and very lean local manufacturing setups. So we do have our own factory right now, a smaller factory, but the idea is if we have areas that we're building multiple units in, we can quickly establish ourselves locally and set up a small factory and build out these units. So obviously supporting the local workforce, but it also minimizes the transportation costs and the carbon emissions from transporting these units. Obviously, you're burning a lot of gas when you're driving these things across the province. So just a quick sort of overview of these types of units. So this is the one that we're building for the Sink House project. This is a small 1-bedroom unit. It's really focused on individuals or couples. So this is the basic sort of floor plan. And then another design that we have, this is a little bit smaller. It's a bachelor studio type design. Again, really focused on individuals or couples. And just a basic example, this is a cabinscape build, but we wouldn't have the garage door in a wildscape design, but just this idea of what that sort of transitional small type of unit could look like. This wouldn't be a CSA unit, but it has, you know, a basic kitchenette, a basic toilet room in it, or it could just be, if you don't have servicing, it could just be a personal space with a bed, again, giving people that opportunity to have a space over their head, and then shared, you know, shared kitchen and bathroom. So that's everything quickly in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes. First of all, thank you, John. And Brad, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Tony. You showed one slide there, the slide before page 13 of the agenda with the CMHC. I didn't have that in my package.
Oh, I have made a couple updates. I'll resend this deck. There might be 1 or 2 slides that have been added since I sent in the original deck. So there's this is sort of just about the timelines on the challenge and then a basic overview of what we're proposing.
Okay, so, well, thanks for that. And then how much land are you looking to get, I guess?
Part of this, again, like I said, with part of the solution is we'd like to be able to design something that can be really fit into any spaces. Like I think one of the places that we want to specialize in is awkward and difficult lots and sites to build in that may not have had potential before. So I wouldn't put a minimum on that. I mean, this as an example at the smallest, these are about 10 feet wide and 30 feet long. For 6 units, you're looking at a lot that's maybe 80 by 60 as like the absolute minimum. That would assume servicing. Otherwise you'd have to figure out the dimensions of a septic and that sort of thing. But we could be talking like an urban, half-acre type lot would be totally workable. Or we could be talking about a rural larger lot where we might be putting in shared servicing, so a shared well and a shared septic. So there's part of the whole point of my approach is I'd like to be flexible about that, so I don't want to put minimum requirements on it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, Steve? Yes, Steve, you can go ahead. Oh, sorry, it's...
There we go, sorry. I've got three quick questions. First of all, the location of the facility where these are being built now, or where you're proposed to do it, the cost of the units, the approximate cost, and whether you have spoken to our housing corporation, specifically Charles Dowdall.
So our current factory is in Clinton, Ontario, is in Huron County, which is right on Lake Huron. Like I said, if we're developing or fabricating a larger quantity of units, we can set it with a fairly small sort of 3,000 square foot shop. If we could find something to lease, we can also build locally. But our current shop is in Huron County right now.
Okay.
Approximate cost, I mean, we'd have to work on costing on these units again specifically for the housing supply challenge. Again, I think we can find efficiencies, especially around volume. For the Wildscape units that I just showed you, our consumer retail price right now is between 150 and 170,000. But again, if we're working volume, and there may be some efficiencies there. And
fully finished?
Sorry?
Fully finished, all the electrics,
Yes.
plumbing, and everything else in it?
Yes, so that's the cost of the unit, fully finished, and it's basically fully furnished. So that would include like all your kitchen cabinets, fridge, everything in the kitchen, as well as like the bed is all built in. So the only furniture there's some minor furniture you might need for like a like kitchen table, that kind of thing, but that's pretty much everything. Yeah.
Okay. And last point about whether you've spoken to our housing corporation about this.
No, I haven't had an opportunity to do so yet. So I mean, if that's kind of a good next step or a good individual to speak to, I'd be happy to follow up with them.
Yeah, I would encourage you to get in touch with Chuck Dowdall, who is responsible for our housing corporation.
Okay.
Thanks very much. They're neat units.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Sorry. Tony, you're muted.
Thank you. Sam, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm currently interested in, do you have any units that could have, say, 2 bedrooms in it, for young families trying to build a little equity?
I mean, we haven't designed units with 2 bedrooms at this stage. I think, like I mentioned, the next thing we'd like to focus on is probably a barrier-free design, which would allow for the aging population. I think a two bedroom unit design could be part of the supply challenge as well. I do get questions around that. That said, too, I guess we're looking to fulfill a certain type of niche. Like there is definitely a demand for single and couples, especially in sort of the waiting list and the lineup for affordable and subsidized housing. So not to say that there isn't a demand for a two bedroom unit. But at this point in time, this is the solution that we're focusing on. So I know that there's other builders, doing larger builds and that sort of thing as well.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes, Sam, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just curious on, did you keep the 10 by 30 design idea for shipping purposes? So bringing from here on to other areas?
Yeah, so I mean, these designs are actually 8.5 by 28. So again, I think the housing supply challenges, we go a little bit larger than that. Yeah, you can get up to you can get up to about 12 feet wide. You need over width permits for that. If you start getting any larger than that, then it starts getting really complicated for transportation. But yeah, that's kind of the idea is, you get up to about 10 by 40 is pretty much the largest you can get before things get really complicated for transportation. And then same thing with height, you don't want to get over 13'6" or transportation can get challenging. So there are, kind of working within those restrictions is definitely something to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you touched on it, but can you just explain, you said there's funding from the federal government for this, or can you explain that again?
Yeah,
and
so this
have you applied?
Yeah, so this is the CMHC Housing Supply Challenge. So they're in stage, well, they call it stage 4, but there's 3 parts. So the first part is just the initial application, which is basically just a written proposal, which is due in April. So I plan on applying in April. I hope to have a partner to work with by that time, although it's not required. But that would basically be broad strokes of more or less what I said in this presentation, in a written form of this, the idea of solutions to modular, sustainable housing, creating a barrier-free design, this idea of sort of multiple units that can be jigsawed together to minimize engineering and design costs on any future projects. So then and all the funding comes from the CHC. There's $150,000 that goes towards the design process in the second half of 2023. And then builders that are shortlisted from that, there's a $37 million pool to actually execute the builds between March 2024 and March 2025. So that $37 million gets broken up between the shortlisted groups. And yes, it's a full-on grant. So basically, whoever the partner is that supplies the property is really just supplying the property. The CMHC pays for the entire build. But I haven't applied yet. The stage 1 application is due in April. So that's what I'm working towards, is finding a partner for that April application. And then if shortlisted from July to December 2023, we would be going through the design process together. At that point, you're basically pinning down exactly what the build is. And then to the winners of that shortlist, the CMHC divvies out that 37 million as they deem appropriate, essentially. But the CMHC funding does cover 100% of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Brenda, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair or Vice Chair. Just a question for you. PELIS, or Prince Edward-Lennox and Addington Social Services, represents both counties of Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington County. If PELIS was interested in being a partner and we could provide land in both counties through PELIS to partner with you, does that help you on an application because it shows greater collaboration if you had multiple partners partnering with you?
I mean, I couldn't say for sure. I feel like it probably would. I mean, if that were the case, if there were 2 different properties, what I would probably be looking to do is experimenting in 2 different ways with each of the properties. So it increases what we're experimenting with. So I feel like it could give us a stronger application, and having more support presumably would. I can't say what from their decision perspective, but I feel like
I just wanted to throw that out as an idea.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, are there any other questions? for John? Sam?
Sorry, last one.
Yeah.
Just curious on how many or how long it takes from start to finish of a project. So like beginning to build to end of build.
So we typically, so the biggest lead time on an actual fabrication of a unit is custom windows and doors. So you're usually looking at around 12 to 16 weeks for that. We can start the build in advance. So from like the very beginning of, okay, we're going to start this project and start ordering to finishing a build is usually about 4 to 6 months. That said, if you can get your ordering going, we can start manufacturing, completing one of these units, every week, basically. So it's just like getting the lead time ordering started. And then when the manufacturing process, when your materials are coming in, then you can work very quickly. If you're getting into the actual development of a property, that becomes subject to working with the municipality, working with, the planners and all that sort of stuff. So if you're doing civil engineering, like if you're getting into any sort of rezoning and stuff, those timelines are different. But the nice thing about manufacturing is we can manufacture all the units while we're going through the civil engineering and site preparation process. So as soon as the site preparation is finished, we bring them in. So for example, the timelines that we're working with Lanark for the sink house project, we're starting building right now, effectively on the units. And between now and June, we should be able to finish preparing connections and preparing site connections. So we expect to be putting these units in place in June or July this year, and we're effectively starting, at the beginning of this year. So we should have those two pilot units up and running by sometime around July this year.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks. John, it's Tony, do you have any of units, single ones, or like how long have you been in business, and do you have any actually installed somewhere?
So again, Cabinscape has been operating for 5 years. We have 35 operating cabins, and we've sold about 4 or 5. Wildscape have just started, and this pilot project with Lanark County is sort of our R&D beginning process. So we do have a lot of experience with building through Cabinscape and setting up the short-term rental company. I've dealt with multiple municipalities. I've done rezoning. I'm a certified septic designer. I'm small house certified. Obviously I have a CSA certified factory. So like we do have quite a bit of experience, but like Wildscape itself, these are our beginnings. So
okay, thank you. And before you leave there, Brenda, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So your thoughts on next steps? Is this something that then we should be referring back to county council to determine if there's interest there, or what are your thoughts on it?
I would think that Pellis Committee should have a discussion about interest, and then you could make a recommendation back to each county to consider a joint partnership with both counties and the developer. But I think it would go a long way with each individual county council if they had the thought process and the input from social services to refer to and rely on. And that would be this committee's purview to discuss that.
Okay, so the question then is, that's something we would try to accomplish today at this meeting, or at the next meeting might be getting a little late.
Yeah, because there's an April deadline, I would suggest that you might want to put this on the agenda. You could amend the agenda and add it as an item at the end of the agenda to have a discussion about if you wanted to pursue this and if you wanted to send a recommendation back to individual counties. I know both of our counties have looked at available land that we have. Like, I know we both have inventories sort of identified with land. And I can tell you, I've already texted my director saying, hey, I'm interested in this. So, but I do think that this committee should have a discussion and then refer it back to the individual county councils.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions for John? Okay, thank you very much, John. That was quite informative and really interesting. And the initiative is, yeah, intriguing to say the least, and certainly will be beneficial to both users and to the environment. It certainly has benefits in many ways. We have a motion to receive John's presentation. Moved by Steve, seconded by Henry. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Great, thank you. I mean, if you are having a discussion, if you want me to pop on anytime, you can send me an email, or I'm happy to come back on if you need any more information.
Great. Okay, thanks. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, could I have a motion to amend the agenda to add this item as item 10 on matters for consideration?
I'll move it.
Great. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Right. And Brad is gone now, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he had
Okay.
an issue he had to deal with.
Thank you. So did we actually have a motion, a vote on that? No. Yes. I didn't remember if it actually voted. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to matters for consideration. Item 1 was the 2023 early years and childcare funding. And Pam, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have anything further to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Are there any questions for Pam? Oh. Guess there's none noted. So we have a motion to receive the report from Pam, moved by Henry, seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Pam. Item 2, access and inclusion framework. And I guess it's you again, Pam.
So again, I don't have a lot to highlight. The only thing I guess I will mention is that the plan was due fairly quickly in January. So we will need to do some more community engagement to really identify specific neighborhoods. And so some of those targets could change and locations could change based on availability of land and potential, well, not land, there's no capital money to buy with this, unfortunately, for land, but maybe there's existing properties that we could use. So there definitely will be more community engagement. So this is just a very high level based on trying to provide equity across our region based on child population and number of current spaces in each community. So try to address some of like the childcare deserts that they call, where there is no current access for families. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Pam. Are there any questions for Pam? Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you for this very thorough report. I was just wondering, of the 62 spaces allocated for Prince Edward County, how many of the additional 11 spaces mentioned in the report are earmarked for PC?
That's a good question. So the total amount includes the 11. I don't know that we specifically identified. The reason for the increase of 11 was just for capacity, because province usually likes us to build to capacity, which is like, for example, 1 or 3 staff to 10 infants. And so our number didn't quite align with our ratio. So we increased the 11, but I can get that answer for you. Unfortunately, I don't have that at my fingertips today, but I'm happy to follow up.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question for you, Pam, and in terms of the challenges to achieve these goals, is it are we comfortable that we have a number of years to get there? So, you know, you can move things around, but are we comfortable we will actually be able to achieve this?
There, that certainly is a something we're not 100% sure on. And when I did submit the plan, I did include a cover letter that identified some of the challenges that may, you know, be a barrier for us. But we certainly are going to make every effort because we want to try to increase access in our communities for sure. So, but some of the barriers are the lack of capital funding, and also the workforce. We have a workforce shortage right now, so. We potentially can figure out how to build spaces, but we may not be able to operationalize them if we don't address the workforce situation, which the province is fully aware of because it's a provincial issue that needs to be worked on. So I did identify that there could be some barriers, but that we were going to make every effort to increase access for our families.
Great, thank you. The intent certainly wasn't to have a negative question there. It was, and I'm sure we will be pushing hard and for I guess our community abroad here to achieve those goals. That's just there are challenges there which we all recognize. Thank you. Sam, you have a question?
Just to follow up yours because it was a good one. So thank you, Tony. Do you think, I know I'm referencing the report earlier, but do you think the increase in wages will help shift people over, and especially with the Ontario government offering back to like second degree programs? Do you think this will help that shift, or any insight in that?
There, certainly the increase in funding that they're providing for wages is certainly going to help. Unfortunately, I don't know that it's enough yet, but they're certainly working towards that. But it's going to help a little bit, and they are looking at other creative things as far as supporting, kind of like the PSW supporting, how do we support with tuition costs and things like that, because they are low income earners for the most part, unfortunately.
Any other questions for Pam? Have a motion to receive a report? Moved by Sam, seconded by Henry. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Pam. We're getting on to item 3, general operating grant. Third one in a row here, Pam.
That is mine as well. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is to ask for Health Committee to consider revising our current general operating grant approval process, which was in 2016 when we brought this report to Palace Committee. And in that report in 2016, we identified the need to or to look at only funding not-for-profit organizations going forward, partly because that was the direction from the ministry at the time to make not-for-profit the priority, and secondly, to ensure we were able to prioritize our funding because we had limited funds. Since the introduction of the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program, that has kind of changed the landscape for some of our for-profit operators who are wanting to participate in the program in order to support families, but their fees have been capped. So they have no ability to increase revenue to support, increased wages and things like that to deliver a quality program. So because of that, those, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit, require some operating supports in order to provide a high quality, sustainable and viable program. So we're asking for consideration to allow us to fund the for-profit who have enrolled in CWEL for 2023, because we don't know what 2024, if there's a new funding formula being introduced by the province, so we don't know the impact of that yet. But we're confident in 2023 we would have enough funds to at least help bridge that gap until we understand what the new funding formula looks like. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Yes, go ahead, Sam.
Just a quick question for clarity. Would this include, for example, at-home daycares, would for profit, for example?
Good question through the chair. So it's only for licensed centers. So unless if they were funded, like attached to a licensed agency, like at the infant center at the hub, those are included and funded through the hub, but privately owned home daycares would not be included because they do have to be licensed.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Pam? Have a motion to receive Pam's report, please. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. We'll move on to item 4, employment services transformation. Patrick, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. This information report is simply to update committee in regards to Palace's continued involvement in the ministry's rollout of the employment services transformation effort, noting a couple upcoming dates and meetings in that rollout. And I'd be happy to take any questions in regards to the report.
Do you have any questions for Pat? I don't see any questions. We have a motion to receive the report from Pat. Moved by Henry, seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move to item 5, Ontario Works centralized intake. Patrick.
Thank you again through you, Mr. Chair. In a similar fashion, this information report is to update committee on Palace's go live with the ministry's centralized intake rollout and noting some of the applications that we've so far received and continue to receive. And again, I'd be happy to take any questions on the report.
Any questions for Pat? No. Don't see any. I'll have a motion to receive Patrick's report. Moved by Henry, seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Patrick. Okay. Item 6 is the homeless prevention program. And Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have this report in front of you. It's about some allocating some surplus funding from the homelessness prevention program. This is my first council meeting or committee meeting, so I'm not sure how much info you would like, but I'll just leave it like that and open it for questions.
That's fine. Thanks, Scott. So we have any questions for Scott? I don't see any, Scott. So there's a recommendation here. We have a motion to receive the report and adopt the recommendation. Moved by Henry, seconded by Sam. Thank you.
Tony?
Yes.
Sorry, I just need to interrupt for 1 second. For item number 3, the general operating grant,
Yes.
there was actually a motion with that as well. Not just to note, but there was a staff recommendation. So can we just circle back to that and make sure that committee is clear on what was approved?
Okay. Just a second here. So we finished this one that we're on or not? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so we had a motion. We did not have all in favor of the motion. This is related to agenda item 6. I think we had the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Yes, so Beth, back to item.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a staff recommendation under item number 3,
Yes,
general operating grant. So I believe it, when we did the vote, it was just to note and receive.
yeah, yes, it was. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to item 3. There was a second part of that, and we just made a motion to note and receive. So we have a motion to approve the second item that's recommended.
I can read the motion if that's helpful for you, Tony.
Yep.
So it's to note and receive the report, and that Pellis Committee approve Pellis staff to enter into new general operating agreements with childcare providers who have enrolled in the Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, regardless of auspice, based on availability of funding for the 2023 year.
Thank you. Are there any questions around that? You moved it. You're moving that, Henry? Yes. Seconded by Sam. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Beth, for pointing that out. I overlooked it. So we're off to item 7, which is a Tamworth housing project. That's Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an exciting program. This is the first housing that Pellis has built since they took over administration of social housing 20 years ago. There's 2 fourplexes for a total of 8 units. 2 are fully accessible, fully barrier-free, and the other 6 that are not technically barrier-free are much more accessible than any of our units built in the 1970s. It's kind of like a 50-year advancement in housing design and technology. And I would encourage anybody going by Tamworth to swing in and take a look. The town actually donated the land and built a road, the township, Stone Mills Township. So they're kind of back behind the fire hall. It's a street called Celtic Drive, but it's a brand new road. So they're fantastic. And this report just talks about they're going to be ready to be occupied soon. And it just talks about how we intend to get the first tenants, and they'll come from our existing building in Tamworth, with also looking at people who are in need of an accessible unit, and go from there.
Great. Thank you, Scott. So do we have questions around the report from Scott and sort of the planned approach for occupancy? No.
If I may add one thing, we will be having a grand opening for this building, hopefully sometime in March. And everybody on the committee will obviously be aware of that and get an invitation.
That'd be great. Yes, I've driven by it. I haven't been in close, but I stopped and had a look at it a month or 2 ago. So it looked pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's great. I'm new to the position. I kind of rolled in right when I didn't have to go through any of the sweat to get it built. It just kind of rolled in and it's built. So it's great from my position and you know, great for the people who will get to live there.
Yes. Yeah. Great. So we have any questions? No questions for Scott. So we have there's 2 motions here. One is to note and receive, and further that the Pellis Committee approve the occupancy and wait list plans for the new Tamworth housing. Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Sam, seconded by Henry. No other questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. Great to meet everyone.
Item 8, the Queen Elizabeth School. So we have Lynn. I guess it. Hi, Lynn. I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, back in November, Pellis Committee approved submitting an expression of interest to the Hastings District School Board for the acquisition of the Queen Elizabeth School in Prince Edward. We were notified on January 12th that we were successful, being that we were fourth on the list in order to be able to submit the expression of interest. So there are several recommendations with this report. The financial impact is there would be no financial impact on the ongoing budget. The housing reserve would be reduced by $800,000, which would be repaid by Prince Edward County in 2024. And the reserve fund is to be used to address future Pellis social housing capital needs. And we've deemed the use of these funds for the project as appropriate. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, go ahead, Steve.
More a comment than a question. This has been a long-standing item that really began in August of 2019. So we in the county are most appreciative of the support because of the location of QE, and our hope that the offer that has to be submitted by April 1st will be accepted. That, as everyone may know, Queen Elizabeth School is located right in the heart of Picton, so could serve, could deal with a whole lot of housing needs, maybe social service needs. So again, thank you for the support.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any. So we have 4 parts to this recommendation. Do we have a motion? Yes, we have a motion to cover all of those. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sam. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thank you, Lynn.
Welcome. Thank you.
Exciting to see how that develops over the
Yeah.
years. Yep.
Absolutely.
Number 9, 2023 preliminary budget estimates. Turn it over to you, Mark.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, if the committee so wishes, I'd like to share my screen. I do have a slide presentation regarding the budget that's in your agenda from pages 87 to 107. So
please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, just want to make sure that the committee can see my screen okay with the presentation up. Okay. So before you today is the Pellis budget for 2023. Just some of the highlights that are included in the slides here is that the overall Pellis budget reflects a 2.8% increase from 2022 on the levy. The cost sharing agreement between the two counties is based upon the Ontario Works caseload, social housing units, and weighted assessment between the two counties. And the 2023 cost share is 63.91% for Lennox and Addington and 36.09% for Prince Edward County. A slight decrease for L&A in 2023 and an increase for Prince Edward County in 2023 compared to 2022. The employment assistance funding will decrease by $129,700. Commencement of the employment services transformation, and it's a 16% reduction in 100% provincial funding. There's the continuation of the province's Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, including 52.75% fee reduction to begin January 1st, 2023 for all eligible sites and families. And provincial funding does still remain strong in the investment for affordable housing program and the homeless prevention program. This is page 90 in your agenda. You can see the overall breakdown, summary of social services of all departments based on the expense categories and revenue categories. Should note that our funding, provincial funding, is 75% of our total budget of 31.7 million. We are expecting to get to 23,770,000 in grants. Other revenue, rental and investment income represents about 6%, and other revenue is like 0.2%. This again is just an overall budget summary in relation to the different program areas, social services, childcare services, social housing, nonprofit housing, and children's capital is right now there's no capital projects going on, and then for the social housing capital. So you can see that the overall cost share, the levy increase for Prince Edward County is 63,000, and Prince Edward County is 101,200. Specifically in social assistance, the 15,000 budget increase in levy is associated with funerals and burials for non-social assistant recipients. This is funded 100% by the municipalities. The former budget of 50,000 had remained static for years, and the present adjustment reflects the anticipated pressures that we are seeing in this regard. So the gross expenditures have risen to approximately 100,000, and monthly costs can fluctuate as much as 20,000 based on the assignments and benefits of tax rebates reduced by the overall cost, about 45%. Okay. Children's services, summary, no expected change in the required levy. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program was initiated in 2022 with a 25% fee reduction for eligible families. Fees have now been reduced to an average of 52.75% for 2023. Social housing, this does, there is a temporary increase in the federal provincial grants, and this will be phased out in 2026. And also that will be the time when the Apina Wins mortgage that we do have, it was renewed in 2019. That's the only mortgage that our outstanding debt we do have any on social housing. 2024, I believe there's about 398,000 that will come due and have to be refinanced for that. Part of the purchased services agreements, materials and supply increase only 38,000 for insurance. Our insurance renewal, it was July 1st, 2022. It was an increase of 38,000. Overall, it was a 23% increase. And then it reflects materials and supplies for social housing due to cost of inflations and the upkeep of those buildings that we're seeing. This is the category for the nonprofit housing. The allocation of the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative was COCHI, and the Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative supports repairs to the community and housing stock. So this is where we support the nonprofit housing by applications and reconciliations each year. And this is the funding that we're supporting, PELIS is supporting those units with. Housing and homeless programs, there is no levy change from last year. The different programs that are supported through has greatly been supported by the provincial and federal funding on that. So that's quite a few different programs that are encompassed in this platform. Social housing capital, obviously that was mentioned earlier, the big project that is just being completed was the Tamworth build. That was funded solely through COCHI, OFI, and the Social Services Relief Fund, and that supported our build and the ability to do that. So we're always on keeping an eye out for any other federal grants, and it can support some federal bills to increase our social housing stock with that. And here's just related to the different capital for the 10-year plan for the social housing units, what we're looking at to spend for this year, and then for predicted for the 10-year capital outlay for the social housing units. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. We are looking for obviously a motion to receive and approve the budget for this evening, or today, sorry, so that both Prince Edward County and Lennox County can build this into our overall budgets.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have questions for Mark on the 2023 budget estimate? No, don't see any questions, Mark. So we have a motion to receive the report and approve the draft budget. Moved by Sam, seconded by Henry. Any other questions? No. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mark. So we will move on to new agenda item 10, which was back to the related to the delegation we had at the start of the meeting. So I'm just going to open that up for discussion to see what the committee members, what their opinion is here. I'll open the floor. Go ahead, Sam.
I'd love to see, I think we should be sending this back to our respective councils and just see how we can be moving forward with these projects, and if they are feasible for our different municipalities. If they work for us, I don't see a problem in trying to see if they work.
Thank you. Yes, Steve.
On mute here. Yeah, yes, I agree. I think this is something our council should be aware of. I note that Chuck Dowdle, the executive director of our housing corporation, is in attendance, and I'm hopeful that he and the deputant can at least have a conversation that may inform some of the conversation that will occur at council about this. I mean, we like everybody else are under extraordinary housing pressure, but Chuck has done a terrific job in identifying, alternative types of housing that may be relevant for Prince Edward County. So, I support this coming to our council to, have get insight into, and as I say, I'm hopeful that Chuck will be able to get together with proponent to find out the viability of these small homes in the county.
Sorry, go ahead, Henry. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I think this needs to come back to Lennox and Addington County also, because I know in the fall with the election campaign, there was certainly a lot of interest in affordable housing in our community, and I think it would be worthwhile looking at.
Thank you, Henry. And as a member of County Council, I'll certainly echo Henry's comments and all the others, because there's a need right across certainly LNA County And I can appreciate Prince Edward has the same issues. So it's a widespread problem and definitely worth us looking into it. So, yes, Brenda.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I could anticipate what the next question was going to be in terms of what kind of motion. So I would suggest that you make a motion to say that if you're inclined to, that Pellis sees value in this proposal and encourages both councils to consider whether they would like to be a potential proponent and potentially in partnership with each other to do it in collaboration through Pellis, which I think might help in terms of their proposal. It would certainly make theirs look more interesting than maybe some others. As well, I'd just like to offer to you, we can ask our IT staff to clip this recording to just the presentation that came from that company and then provide it to both staffs for the staff report so that you wouldn't be asking your council to maybe try to watch a whole agenda, but just the actual video clip pertaining to this. It might be useful in a report to your councils, to both councils.
Yeah, yes, the actual discussion that we had was very interesting, and it was not long, but very informative. So yeah. Are there any other comments before we ask someone to make a motion? So does someone want to make the motion that Brenda was essentially describing for us? Henry, moved by Sam. Do we have any other questions on it? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we have matters for information, and that's Pellis performance metrics. And I only have a comment for anyone who takes time to browse through those once in a while. I find them very interesting. Not always comforting, but very interesting. So did you want to comment on those, Kent?
Yeah, sure. I can just give a quick update, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. So good morning, everyone. This report is to provide an update on the performance metrics at Pellis. Pellis had an increase in the Ontario Works caseload from November to December. And the current caseload currently sits at 848 cases. There was a slight decrease in the number of applications received in December compared to November, with both months receiving more than 40 applications. The number of clients in the caseload reporting paid employment decreased by less than a percentage in December. The average number of days clients spend on assistant has started to increase since the beginning of April, and the province has seen similar trends as Pellis in the performance metrics as well. Within children's services, the number of fee subsidy applications received in November and December were lower compared to the applications received in 2021 for the same months. The number of children supported through fee subsidy increased in December compared to November, ending with a total of 160 children and 90 households being supported. Housing services placed 4 households in rent geared income housing over the past 2 months. The number of housing applications received in November and December were lower compared to the prior months in 2022, and Pellis currently has 144 occupied rent supplement units. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Kent or comments? Thank you very much, Kent. Yes. These metrics that tool is a wonderful tool and gives everyone quick access to the key statistics, which is pretty important to members of council. So thank you. We have a motion, but it's matters for information because we have a motion to receive this information. Moved by Sam, seconded by Henry. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kent. Are there any other matters that anyone wants to bring to this Pellis meeting? Yes, go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, there's just one part. I was wondering if possible, I know it was passed and I don't want to change the agenda at all. I just have a question about the in matters of consideration, 2023 early years and childcare funding that just came to me after we passed it. I just would like a clarification from Pam if possible,
Yes, go
if
ahead.
she's still here.
Would you be able to do that, Pam? Yes. Oh, are you muted, Pam?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry,
ahead,
just my question is, with the $5 million that was brought for funding in between our two municipalities, do we know what about the ratio shift of that would be between the two, or is that still up for consideration?
Chair, I can get that level of detail for you if you would like.
I would.
We don't necessarily have a funding formula per se, though. It is based on actual, so it depends on what each center requires in a lot of cases, because there's different funding pots. So it's not always a specific formula, but I can certainly provide you with kind of trends over the last few years and what we're anticipating. But those, again, it's for budget, it's projected based on previous years, but we do fund actuals.
No, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And that's it. Sorry to bring that back. Thank you.
That's fine, not a problem at all. That's why I asked. Thank you for bringing it up, Sam, and thanks, Pam, for responding. Any other questions, issues? No. None noted. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time today, the members of the committee and the members of staff from both counties. Very much appreciated. So we have a motion for adjournment. Moved by Sam, seconded by Steve. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, staff, for all your support.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you so much.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye.